For 18 years, Kody Brown talked. He talked to his wives, he talked to his kids, he talked to producers, and for almost 2 decades, he addressed us personally, the viewers, through the eyes of a camera. He wove a tale of religion, family, and the difficulties of plural marriage. But what Kody never realized, and what the network could never have foreseen, was that every word, every frustrated sigh, every raw confession might one day be used against him in a court of law. Welcome to Reality Recap. What you're about to hear comes from deep research, insider reports, and carefully pieced together theories from those close to the Browns' orbit. This is the narrative the network won't let come out. If you ever thought the truth has been right in front of us and you want to be a part of the crew that is bringing it out, do me a favor, give this video a like so the YouTube algorithm knows this story is important. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell because you won't want to miss a moment of this investigation. Now, let's get into it. The demise of the Brown family as we knew them did not occur overnight. It unraveled gradually, agonizingly, and in the public eye for the world to see. First came Christine, the family's spiritual center, who escaped, relocated to Utah, and destroyed the carefully constructed facade of plural contentment. Next came Janelle, the voice of practical reason, who finally selected her children and financial security over a patriarch she no longer needed. And finally Meri, the initial wife, the faithful soldier, formally discharged from a spiritual bond that by all accounts had been loveless and platonic for over 10 years. At first glance, it seemed like a tale of emotional damage, of broken hearts and changing allegiances. The public narrative, the one that TLC and the tell-alls perpetuated, centered on emotions. Kody felt betrayed. The wives felt ignored. It played like a soap opera unfolding in real time. But suppose that wasn't the true story. Then, what if in private it wasn't about love but something harder, colder, and much more binding? What if it was actually about money, property, and decades of supposed manipulation, both economic and emotional? As per accounts by insiders close to the family's legal struggle, leaving the 3 original wives wasn't merely an emotional departure. It ignited one of reality television's most complicated high-roller legal wars. A war not waged on television, but in the shadows of law firms and backroom arbitration hearings. At the center of it all, Coyote Pass. Coyote Pass wasn't mere dirt. It was supposed to be the Browns' promised land, the culmination of their journey where they'd build forever homes side by side and live their plural dream. They pooled resources, earnings from the show, Janelle's real estate expertise, Christine's MLM profits, and Meri's business ventures. Together, they created an LLC, Brown Family Properties, to hold the land. Legally, that LLC tied them together tighter than any religious marriage could. A religious union can be dissolved by a talk. A limited liability company must have a legal dissolution. And with dissolution, there is division of assets. That is where things went wrong. How do you split equally when effort was not? And when leadership was, shall we say, skewed? Janelle and Christine had invested years of savings into the property. Janelle even resided in an RV on the property, a testament to her sacrifice. Christine sold her Las Vegas house and put the proceeds into the family pool, a fund that Kody had large control over. Janelle had previously stated, "I've put everything I have into this family." Christine reiterated, "All I want is to build a home, a place for my kids." But as the marriages fell apart, the wives and their lawyers realized something horrifying. The money was not sitting in a neutral account. The power lay with Kody, managing partner of the LLC and self-styled patriarch. And from rumor, he wasn't going to write checks and cut out. He envisioned Coyote Pass as his legacy, his and Robyn's. The initial courtroom fights, explained by insiders, were arduous. Attorneys sifted over financial reports, deeds, LLC documents, and bank statements. The wives' lawyers struggled to establish contribution dollar for dollar, what they'd contributed versus what they'd received. But Kody's defense, reports claimed, rested on the premise of plural marriage itself. He reportedly asserted all money was family money. Everything, he contended, went into one pot under his management. Who gave whom how much, in Kody's view, wasn't an issue. It was God's money, family money, and his to dispense as patriarch. That put everything at an impasse legally and emotionally, he said. She said, classic style. Except there were 4 she is this time. The wives' lawyers had pounds and pounds of receipts, but lacked one key element: intent. They might be able to track where the funds went, but couldn't ascertain why. They couldn't necessarily illustrate that Cody had systematically channeled resources towards Robyn at the expense of starving financially Meri, Janelle, and Christine. To an arbitrator or judge, it might just look like a disordered family conflict. Cody might spin it as difficult, but for the best of the entire household. Even if it seemed unfair, he could shield himself behind the intricacies of his multiple religion system. What the attorneys required was a smoking gun. They required Kody Brown's raw words. That is when one attorney hatched a bold, almost revolutionary plan: the subpoena that would upend everything. Cameras did not leave the Browns for 18 seasons. They were in their houses, their vehicles, even on vacation. Thousands and thousands of hours of footage were shot. What we get to see on TLC, the neat shows, are only the tip of an enormous iceberg. For each 10-minute argument shown, there may be hours of raw, uncut footage. For each neat tell, all response, there were hundreds of outtakes, informal interviews with producers, and off-guard comments between shots. That elusive archive was the new target. The legal plan, as it was laid out for us, was nothing less than a masterstroke. The wives' attorneys issued a subpoena deuces tecum, a court order for evidence directly to the production company. But they were not asking for accounting forms. They were seeking something more precious: the raw, unaired footage. And in particular, the one-on-one interviews and the tearfully emotive tell, all reunion tapes over the past decade. Why was this so historic? Because in those sessions, Cody is most chatty. Sure, he is performing, but he is also thinking out loud. The lawyers surmised that during the seconds before the cameras were officially rolling, or immediately after a heated argument, Cody would drop his guard and say something most real, venting to a producer he believed was a friend. Consider a tell, all setting. It is a pressure cooker. Cody sits beneath blistering lights for hours, interrogated about the most intimate aspects of his life. He is restless, combative, and eventually his carefully crafted television persona starts to break. The attorneys weren't looking for the Cody that was groomed for Sukanya Krishnan's inquiry. They were seeking the Cody that slumped back, huffed, and breathed what he actually felt once he thought the cameras were no longer rolling. The production company, caught between defending their star and respecting a binding court order, had no option. Inside sources say terabytes, not gigabytes. Terabytes of unedited raw digital footage were turned over. Unfiltered, it was a treasure trove of intimate Brown family moments. And as the attorneys rooted through the hours, it didn't take long to discover what they were looking for. What they discovered, sources say, was more incendiary than anyone anticipated. The incriminating evidence wasn't in the sensational blow-ups or weeping arguments that aired. It was in the soft-spoken moments, the snarky jabs, the cynical aside comments. It was Kody Brown, in his own words, validating the very suspicions the wives had harbored for years. And the first bombshell. It struck straight at wife number one. The very first tape became infamous among the legal teams. "I'm just playing a part." The scene, as described by insiders, came from raw footage of a recent tell, all taping. A segment had just wrapped discussing the official end of Cody and Meri's relationship. Meri sat visibly emotional. The director called for a short break to reset. Convinced he was off mic and off camera, Cody strolled over to an old producer, glad to unwind. He waved in the direction of the couch, where Meri sat dismissively. Unbeknownst to him, his lapel mic was still live, recording every comment into the raw audio record. The producer spoke softly. "That was tough. Man, she is taking it bad." Cody allegedly responded, "Taking it hard. Come on. You and I both know the truth. This spiritual marriage thing, it is just a storyline now. Meri's out. She has been out for 10 years. I am just playing a part on this show. It is what keeps the checks coming for her, for me, for everyone. She knows it. I know it. At this point, we're just actors. Now, let's unpack the devastating impact of that alleged statement." For years on camera, Cody carefully maintained a very specific narrative about Meri. On camera, Cody would often say things like, "I'm not in a romantic relationship with Meri," but he always framed it within the context of faith and plural marriage. He'd insist, "The spark is gone, but the covenant remains." That allowed Meri and the audience to cling to the hope that their spiritual bond, the very foundation of the family, still had meaning. He painted it as a tragedy, a collective spiritual test they were both undergoing. This alleged clip destroys that entire framing. It flips the story from a spiritual failure into something colder. A cynical business arrangement, a deception aimed at Meri, the network, and even the viewers at home. The phrase "playing a part for the show" is the dagger. Legal experts we've consulted suggest that such a statement could be viewed as nothing less than an admission of fraud, and why? Because of money. So the checks would continue to flow. On this reading, Cody wasn't simply deceiving Meri on an emotional level. He was supposedly using the guise of a spiritual marriage to maintain the economic pipeline of the franchise, one from which he directly profited the most. In her own eyes, the effect is devastating. Years she poured her heart and money into the family, making life-changing decisions under the impression that she was a wife in every sense of the word, in an heavenly union. She remained in Flagstaff, separated from her thriving Utah business and family on that supposition. But Cody's reported confession indicates he knew it wasn't true, and lied about it for money. This was not an offhand admission. It was motive. It gave the why the attorneys had been pursuing. Why keep Meri dangling for a decade? Why not grant her a clean emotional divorce? The reason, it seemed from the tape, was clear business. The ambivalence about whether Cody and Meri would get together again fueled ratings. It sold commercials. It sustained the Brown family business. And in a courtroom, that shifts the narrative entirely. It's no longer about Cody being a neglectful husband. It reframes him as the architect of a long-term fraudulent scheme. It casts decisions about family assets, including Meri's stake in Coyote Pass, not as good faith negotiations, but as moves made under a false pretense that Cody himself allegedly knew was untrue. This initial tape, one careless utterance, allegedly altered the course of the court fight. It showed that Cody could be saying one thing on camera, and the complete opposite when he did not think anyone was watching. It was the first fissure in his wall of plausible deniability. And it was just the tip of the iceberg. For the next one, because now the lawyers knew what to look for. They had a pattern. And the next tape they found, sources claim, went directly for the family's economic jugular after the woman who had been the family's economic pillar for decades. Janelle, welcome back to Reality Recap. Part 1 of our special report established the thesis of a shadowy legal battle on the heels of the Browns' implosion. We explained the game, altering subpoena that opened up terabytes of unseen video, and we exposed the first purported tape in which Cody confessed his spiritual marriage to Meri was nothing more than an acting job he did for the show. That one scene, sources say, set the trend of dishonesty. But whereas that tape exposed emotional and spiritual deception, the next piece of evidence burrowed into something much more tangible: money, hard, cold cash. And what it would imply would lay bare the profound financial disparity which had become characteristic of the Brown family. It is all about context here. The so-called tape was part of raw video of a one-on-one interview shot during the season when Janelle made the difficult decision to purchase an RV and live out on Coyote Pass. Cody portrayed it on camera as a combination of support and frustration, presenting it as Janelle's independent, even defiant, choice. But the lawyers were interested in what he meant when the official cameras broke. Cody allegedly said, "It is easy. Folks get hung up on figures and ledgers, but that is not how a patriarchy is set up. That is not how a kingdom does finances. Janelle's my business partner, she is great at it, essentially my CFO. But Robyn's my soulmate, and in my universe, money trails after the soul. The money, the protection, the good life, they go where the heart of the family is. The money follows the soul. The money follows the soul. Let that sink in." This alleged statement, more than any ledger or deed, has been called the Rosetta Stone for understanding the Browns' financial collapse. Legal analysts we've spoken with argue it could serve as the ultimate smoking gun in proving financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty within the family's LLC. And the implications for Janelle, catastrophic. For years, Janelle was the family's primary, if not the primary breadwinner. As other people were dedicating time to raising children, she maintained full-time employment, provided stability, and invested her income into the family account. Her restraint held the Browns together. When she signed up to acquire Coyote passed through the LLC, she entered into that transaction as a businesswoman, investing her capital with hopes of recouping it. In Janelle's situation, she just wanted a house and a property to call her own at last. At face value, Cody's comment, "Financially, Janelle is my business partner," is complimentary. But in the complete context, it is really wounding. It is not praise, it is a demotion. He is giving her credit for her financial worth, but removing any emotional or spiritual significance. In effect, he brings her down to the level of an ATM, the family's CFO, and positions himself as CEO and Robyn as the sole shareholder of his heart. But the most incriminating bit is the addendum. Robyn is my soulmate. The money follows the soul. That isn't fairness, that isn't equality. It's a deliberate financial strategy, one where pooled resources aren't distributed based on need or contribution, but based on Cody's personal favoritism. It's an admission that he used Janelle's, Christine's, and Meri's money to build a comfortable life with Robyn. Suddenly, so many bewildering financial choices on the show start to add up. Why was money always available for Robyn's sprawling rental house, yet Janelle was forced to live in an RV? Why was Isabel's surgery considered an expense, yet Robyn's nanny wasn't? Cody's supposed philosophy, money follows the soul, provides the explanation. In his philosophy, resources were rewards connected to his love. In a court of law, this is dynamite. Being the managing partner of the LLC, Cody was obligated by a fiduciary responsibility to act for the best interest of every partner. Legally, he could not be enriching one at others' expense, and this claim implies very much that deliberate, values-based misappropriation, not merely poor management but intentional discrimination. His own words reportedly admit that his emotions determined where shared capital went. For Janelle's lawyers, this was the angle. Instantly, each of the sacrifices, each of the contributions she had ever made could be reinterpreted this way. Her frugality, her discipline, her devotion to the family pot were, by Cody's own admission, the impetus behind the life he constructed solely with Robyn. That is not only betrayal of their spiritual union, it is a betrayal of their business relationship. At this juncture, as insiders realized, the case against Cody was taking shape. The attorneys now had evidence of alleged emotional fraud against Meri and financial fraud against Janelle. But they needed one more piece of evidence that documented Cody's disrespect for the most important duty of all: fatherhood. And the third alleged tape supplied just that. The third tape, trapped by obligations. This last bit of evidence allegedly occurred during one of the Browns' toughest times, when Christine planned to leave, and Cody's strict COVID rules broke his relationship with many of their kids. On camera, Cody acted the role of the heartbroken dad, claiming he was acting in the family's best interest. But off-camera, in a hushed rant session, a much different Cody appeared. One of the crew members, Matter, factly stated, "Tough day, huh? A lot going on with Christine and the kids." Cody allegedly let out a sigh and said, "You have no idea. I feel so trapped. I did my duty. I gave her kids. I provided a home. I played the part for 25 years. And now I am still stuck with obligations, Isabel's college, Truly's needs, Pete and this. Mickelty, that it never ends. With Robyn's children, it is different. They're my family now. But with Christine's children, it is as if I am paying for a life that I don't even wish for anymore." This alleged statement cuts deeper than any other. It exposes the rot at the center of Cody's patriarchal philosophy. For years, the Browns sold the world on the principle that in plural marriage, all the children were everyone's children. Cody wasn't supposed to be father to Meri's 1, Janelle's 6, Christine's 6, and Robyn's 5 separately. He was father to 18, the wives were supposed to be mothers to all. But this tape purportedly proves that when Christine moved out, Cody ceased to treat her children as his happy duty, only as a weight around his neck. He made a harsh line: Robyn's children were his family, and Christine's became burdens legally. This is heartbreaking. Even apart from divorce, family law speaks to child support and the equitable division of shared property for the benefit of children. Christine's attorneys might also plead emotional damages and contract breach, not a contractual one, but the spiritual and familial covenant that the Browns had constructed their sense of self around. Cody had promised to be the father of Christine's children forever. This reported remark recasts that vow as simply an obligation he begrudged, an incarceration he had to endure. And then, suddenly, All those agonizing moments we were watching on screen assumed deadly new meaning. His insistence on not going with Isabel for the surgery that changed her life, the distance in his relationship, and his near-complete lack of presence among the children who no longer shared a roof with him and their mother spoke volumes. It was never really about safety procedures, no matter how often he insisted otherwise. Based on the supposed recordings, it boiled down to something very sinister. He simply didn't want it anymore. He was suffocated. The lawyers now had a three-pronged arsenal of evidence. Emotional deceit, where he confessed the marriage with Meri, was an on-camera showpiece. Financial malfeasance, freely admitting he had directed communal funds towards Robyn, his so-called soulmate, and paternal responsibility breach, where he described children with Christine as a trap, something he did not wish to bear. Combined, they created a chilling picture of the real mindset of Kody Brown. This wasn't the picture of a polygamist patriarch, besieged by the burdens of leadership in a large family. It was instead a man who viewed his previous vows as shackles, intentionally redirecting his emotional and monetary resources into one lovingly planned future with Robyn. The drama was staged, not for a television tell, all with gentle, pre-vetted questions, but for a court battle where those very tapes would be heard in his own words. Or witnesses characterized this last confrontation not as a televised trial, but as binding arbitration, a closed-door, private hearing in a sterile conference room acting as a courtroom in name only. The tension was electric, heavy with decades of anger, financial worry, and secrets buried long ago. On one side of the lengthy table were Meri, Janelle, and Christine with their lawyers. On the other, Cody and Robyn, grim, faced and alone. Up until now, the hearings had been sobering disputes about spreadsheets, deeds, and figures. Cody had been intransigent, trotting out his prepared statements that he had never done anything but what was best for the family. And then the lead attorney for the wives stood. "Your Honor, we would like to introduce evidence which goes to the intent of Mr. Brown." A screen was rolled into place. Sources say Cody looked baffled, unaware of what was about to unfold. The first recording began. "Meri's out. She's been out for a decade. I'm just playing a part for the show." The room was immobilized. Cody, ashen and upset, glared from his attorney to Robyn, but there was no one to bail him out. His own words had been his undoing, coming back to haunt him with the force of 10 years of falsehood. But it didn't stop there. The second tape began financially. "Janelle is my business partner, but Robyn is my soulmate. The money follows the soul." If the initial tape had busted open the heart of their religious core, this was the cannon blast that wrecked the ship of their economic union. As one writer described it, it was the kill shot. In his hubris, Cody had explained the very plan Janelle's attorneys had been attempting to establish, gift, wrapped in his own words. Finally, the last tape. "It just feels like I am trapped, paying for a life I don't even want anymore." This was the ultimate betrayal. Not of a wife, but of a father. Those words cut the sacred bond to his children, a crushing verification of the emotional abandonment Christine had endured for years. The tapes did what months of courtroom politics had been unable to do. They did more than establish evidence, they established the truth. They stripped away the reality television image and exposed the man behind, one who, when he thought he was alone, confessed to controlling his wives, taking their money, and hating his own kids. His demise was not due to an attorney's plea, but his own words. The verdict and aftermath, the arbitrator's decision, as described to us, was quick and absolute, a total victory for the wives. First, the Brown Family Properties LLC was ordered dissolved immediately. An independent trustee was appointed to oversee the forced sale of all Coyote Pass parcels. The dream was finished, terminated by court order second. The money wouldn't be split equally between four. With irrefutable evidence of Janelle and Christine's monetary contributions, along with proof of Cody's intentional diversion, the division was greatly in their favor. They would finally be made rendered as financially complete as legally possible. Third, and most significantly, insiders say that both Christine and Meri were given significant damages for fraudulent inducement, breach of covenant, and emotional distress. The tapes themselves were referenced as the main proof. Cody's own words were used as the trading medium to gauge the price of his betrayal. The fallout was ruinous for Robyn and Cody. Not only did they lose the property, but they were also said to be burdened with a huge financial judgment that wiped out most of the wealth they had built up. The empire Cody had so painstakingly constructed around Robyn now threatened to topple under financial failure. Ultimately, the collapse of the sister wives drama was about more than broken marriages. It was a warning against the danger of investing in your own legend. Kody Brown had a microphone and a soapbox for 18 seasons, and he never once laid them down. He preached, he justified, he pointed, he postured, he wah. He was the hub around which his family and a successful reality show centered. But he forgot the cardinal truth: the microphone is always on. Cody wasn't undone by Christine's rebellion, Janelle's practicality, or Meri's isolation. He was undone by his own ego, his own arrogance, his own words spoken when he thought no one was listening. The so-called tell tapes, those secret recordings the network never broadcast, became his enduring legacy. A legacy he created. Evidence that sometimes the most damning evidence against a man is merely the sound of his own voice, testifying to a reality he never intended the world to know.